Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about new Zelda movie design and set leaks that have some really big and interesting implications. So as many of you may have already heard, or if you haven't, I'll tell you now, a few days ago, Sony Pictures officially announced that filming for the live-action Zelda movie has been completed. And since then, some little things have been coming out. For example, we talked about this that's been circulating. There has been this logo for The Legend of Zelda stunt department. So clearly they created this logo for the stunt department. It's basically the Breath of the Wild logo, but with gold. But we already talked about this a few days ago. Some people think it implies that it's going to have a heavy inspiration from Breath of the Wild. We have seen Princess Zelda clad in her blue attire, very much like Princess Zelda from Breath of the Wild. So there's maybe an idea to that, but also there's a lot of other things I think go well against the idea that this is a Breath of the Wild movie. I think in reality, similar to the Mario movies, it's going to be more like an amalgamation of different Zelda tropes into one movie that feels like the Zelda movie experience. But anyways, there's been a whole bunch of new stuff that has come out. We've seen things from the set, we've seen maybe a temple of some kind, we've seen art of different characters that could have some vast implications for the story of the movie, but also perhaps more connections to that widely reported, long theorized, and rumored Ocarina of Time remake. And also, we may have gotten a pretty significant look at the design of Link in the movie. So there's a lot to analyze and talk about today. Of course, if you find yourself enjoying my videos and you haven't subscribed already, I would very much appreciate your subscription. But another example of how this movie is likely an amalgamation and not just based off one particular game, there have been these patches that have been circulating as well that have come out. And so, unlike the stunt department logo we saw, this is for the camera department, and as you see here, it's showing a pixel style with the Zelda logo that's very reminiscent of the original Zelda 1 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. So a very different Zelda look there, and then you look at the Link that's actually in the patch, you could argue that this is like a pixelized version of Link from Ocarina of Time. So yes, we're looking at a mixture of things here, but I just want to say that this is a very cool looking patch, so I'm happy for the camera department. But here's where there are some things getting out there that could have some significant implications here. So as we see here, this is Princess Zelda. We've already seen how she looks from the leaked set footage, and that's pretty much what we're looking at there. Nothing too crazy. Actually, not even just a leaked footage. We've gotten official imagery from Nintendo of how she's going to look. But then there are these two other characters right here. And thinking it through, I think most likely what we're looking at here are depictions of Kokiri. So what's fascinating about this is that the Kokiri are from Ocarina of Time. They have not been prevalent characters since, and since we have been hearing about the Ocarina of Time remake, bringing them back here, making them more prevalent, is certainly curious. But you might be wondering, why am I thinking the Kokiri? Well, for starters, there is kind of like this subtle green look to them. That alone does not say much, but you see her right here, she's got the green boots, she's got this green little jacket, a green little scarf, leaves coming out of her side, very foresty. This one, not so much, but what makes him look very foresty is this stone he's holding right here. It looks like the Kokiri Emerald from Ocarina of Time. That is the spiritual stone. That is the most important artifact from that region of the world of Hyrule. And so I do think there's a very good chance we're looking at Kokiri here because of that and these other little details. But here's another big one. That is a fairy. Fairies only belong to the Kokiri in Ocarina of Time. So I would say there is a very strong chance at least this person right here, this girl, is a Kokiri. This one, on the other hand, maybe not, but given that he's holding what appears to be the Kokiri Emerald, also likely a Kokiri. And if we're talking about the Kokiri, we're also talking about a depiction of the Deku Tree, but not just any Deku Tree, the Deku Tree that had the Kokiri, in other words, the Ocarina of Time Deku Tree. And so I think that's really, really cool to think about here, a different depiction of the Deku Tree that we haven't seen in many years, and we're now going to see it in live action. And I'm also very curious how the Kokiri would be depicted in this movie. Are they going to be children, or are they going to be like young adults? How will they handle this? In the story of Ocarina of Time, they are in the shape of children, but they don't age, so they're not actually children. They just have the bodies of children, but have been around for many, many years. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they handle that in this movie, a live-action movie where we're seeing everything with a lot more realism. So there's going to be challenges there in terms of how these characters are depicted, but it's going to be very interesting to see, nonetheless, when that time comes. Of course, it's all an assumption based off this illustration from the filming of the movie. So I would say it bodes well. But we are just getting started. There's still some more interesting stuff to talk about here. So there's been this photo floating around where they took a picture of the crew, and there's this environment, and there are some cool things about this environment. So you notice here on the floor, there's this kind of like circular sort of logo. Well, someone noticed, Basco on Twitter, that it might be Farore's symbol. I think it probably is Farore's symbol, which would suggest that this is something related to the forest, the Kokiri perhaps. Now, it's possible that this is just one of the 3 symbols, and this could be the Temple of Time, because you notice back here how this wall is being depicted, as pointed out in this very thread by ZeldaCast. There does seem to be a similarity to the Temple of Time from Ocarina of Time as well here, with the way this wall is etched out. I wouldn't say that's like a hard confirmation there's a similarity. We're gonna need a little bit more than that to assume it's the Temple of Time, but clearly it's a building, an ancient building or temple, and it at least has Farore's symbol, could possibly have more to the sides here. There's even some interesting symbolism down here that I can't make out, but there's clearly some interesting glyphs they're putting in throughout this building here, so that's really cool. Something else I notice is that you have these blue tarps running through on the sides, and they might want to make this actually kind of like a spring. So this might be less so a reference to Ocarina of Time and possibly a reference to Skyward Sword. Because in Skyward Sword, there were 3 different springs, or they also had them in Breath of the Wild as well, but there were these springs, and there would be water running through them. So I'm kind of left to think that water being running through here on the sides. You're going to see Farore's symbol, and you step up here to some sort of pedestal, perhaps to power up the Master Sword or something like that after having gone through a dungeon. Or maybe collect the Kokiri's Emerald. It could all be somehow related. Again, reminder, this is likely going to be an amalgamation of different Zelda things, so bringing in different Zelda concepts together and making it all fit. That could be what's going on here. But now on to the big thing. As we see here shared by Krista Nova on Twitter, Gyula Palos on his Instagram had shared out this image of a clapper with this Link design. And it's gone viral. People are going crazy about this design. It looks pretty cool, gotta say, it looks pretty cool. It was taken down. The post is no longer out there, at least from Gyula Palos, so this does appear to have been an actual leak. This was not intended to have gone out there, it looks like. They may not have realized what they have done. And taking a look at this design here, we are seeing a very cool look of Link, and we've seen the leaked footage of Link from the set, and it does appear to be similar, but here we see there's a chain mail. We see a Master Sword, although the design is very different, and at first I was wondering if this was perhaps AI generated. It definitely gives off a similar vibe. Regardless, this was used as an actual clapper in the filming of the movie, and this is clearly art here, and I think what it does show is the direction they are trying to go for with Link. And so this has a very Twilight Princess-like look, like notice the long bangs, notice the chainmail as I mentioned earlier. There are some differences, like he's wearing a long cape here, and actually from the footage we've seen of the leaked set with Link, he is putting on some kind of cape or cloak, and so it looks like that's what's being depicted here. This is not the actual actor. This is just a depiction of how the actor, when fully dressed, may appear to an extent. This is art, to be clear. But this design of Link I find to be very interesting. This is going back to the green tunic Link. I like this version of Link. The Twilight Princess look is the most realistic looking of the green tunic Links. So given that they're going back to that in a live action movie, this direction does make a lot of sense. Now what I'm curious about here, Benjamin Evan Ainsworth is 17. They just finished filming of the movie. He's still pretty young. Can they honestly depict him as an adult-looking version of Link? Because looking at this art here, this does not look like a child Link. This does not look like a young Link. Now, Link is usually still technically kind of young. Ocarina of Time Link in his adult form is actually 17, which is technically Benjamin's literal physical age during the filming of this movie. So perhaps they're simply going for a young adult-like look, but if they are planning to make multiple movies, I do envision that Benjamin will continue to mature, like perhaps they will have him put on some muscles so he shows a little bit more in stature as the movies progress. We'll see. But something else I want to talk on here before closing out is just the depiction of the Master Sword. Again, kind of looks AI generated, maybe simply a new version of the Master Sword. Going back to what I mentioned earlier, how it looks like we could be looking at what appears to be a spring very much like from Skyward Sword. There may be a big piece to the story here of finding the pieces to the Master Sword, powering up the Master Sword. Maybe it's even the case that we will not be seeing the Master Sword for most of the movie. Maybe we won't see it until the very end, because Benjamin may need to earn his right to be treated as the true hero, and will have to go through a rite of passage through challenges, very much the way it works for most Links in different Zelda games. When thinking about the plot summary of the movie from the IMDb page, which again sounds very basic, but it does talk about Link needing to acquire the materials needed to defeat Ganondorf, and so that material, the main one, may be the Master Sword, and collecting the different jewels or artifacts going to these different springs may play a significant role in getting to that point. I think that makes a lot of sense. That's how a lot of prior Zelda games have worked. They probably want to tell at least a little bit of that in this movie. But also considering what I mentioned earlier, how Benjamin may need to grow into this role if there are going to be future movies, which we have heard, it's not confirmed, but we have heard that, it's a rumor, then perhaps this depiction of Link is what they're kind of aiming for once Benjamin ages up a couple years in a second or third movie. This is cool stuff though. I like what we're seeing here. I imagine more will come out. This is Zelda's 40th anniversary. A lot of you may have already noticed now that the Mario movie has come out, there's been a lot more Zelda discussions, and I imagine that's only going to continue. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.